Hello and welcome to Dev Discussion. This is a new long-form series where I interview different developers from all around the world and we just have a long chat about the video game development industry. If you guys don't know, my name is Eli and I run an indie game studio called TreeFall Studios. I've released games over the last 10 years on different platforms like the Wii U, PlayStation 4, Steam, and the Atari VCS. Today, my first guest is Thomas Stewart, the CEO and creator of Set Sail Games. He just recently released his first commercial project, Tanks But No Tanks, on Steam. All right, we are live. What's going on, man? How are you doing?
Hey Eli, doing good today.
Sweet. We had some technical difficulties, guys, and now this is our second take. So, I mean, this is our second introduction to each other, but we're ready
Yes.
to talk about video games today. All right, man. So the first couple questions we're going to ask you are some questions about you and your history, and we're going to be getting to know you a little bit before we go in and start talking about today's discussion topic. So, guys, we're going to be introducing Thomas to you. My first question is, why game development, and how did you get started in the game development industry when there are tons of industries you could have chose?
Yeah, that's a great question. My technical journey started in college. I wasn't sure exactly what I wanted to study, but I ended up going for a major in computer science. And so I learned a bunch about computers there, and I enjoyed programming and the kind of puzzle solving element of that. Um, but my what?
I was just like, oh, I'm like,
Uh,
it's rare to hear someone be like, I love programming.
oh, I know.
Yeah,
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 I know. Yeah, yeah. I don't know. Programming is really interesting because it's just all like logic, and especially if you're the only person on a project, you have to figure out how to not screw yourself in the future by making sure that you put all these safeguards against like
yeah,
logic. And yeah, I don't know. It's
yeah,
it's it's like its own beast, you know.
yeah.
Um and I enjoy that part of it. So anyway, so my first job out of college, I started working for a company doing Java enterprise portal web development. So I was making websites for banks and insurance companies, and it wasn't really my jam. And I kind of had this like quarter life crisis where I realized that this is like what I'm going to be doing for the next like 30 or 40 years probably. And so I was like, it's still early enough in my career that I can make some good pivots. And so my wife was in grad school at the time, so she was studying all the time. So I took that space to also further my own education. So I started learning some game
Smart.
development and just figuring out like, is this something that I want to do? And it wasn't just game development actually, which is pertinent to this question. I also spent some time learning like some more art, graphic design stuff, and I set up like a drop shipping t-shirt website business, and like I
Wow.
started running like Facebook ads to see like if I could sell t-shirts online.
Okay,
um
you entrepreneur, you.
yeah, yeah, I definitely had that goal of,
Yeah,
if I could be self-employed, it would open up a lot of time for me,
yeah,
and I could work on things that interest me. um yeah, I didn't sell very many t-shirts, but I learned so much.
yeah, yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
So through that I started learning game development, and I just fell in love with it because it's programming plus fun. Like, it's
Yeah,
like like you
yeah,
can
yeah,
at my old job, like you could code something perfectly, and it would like you could submit a form and there wouldn't be any errors, and then you would see like data in the database, which was like so dull. But
hmm,
in games, you program something and then you test it, and it's fun to test, and it looks cool, and you can show people and they're like, "Oh, that's cool. How'd you do that?" So
yeah. Oh,
it's
yeah.
it's just so different. I call game dev the perfect combination between math and art.
Hmm. That's
Yeah.
pretty awesome. That leads me like right into my next question because, for most people and for me, getting into game development is just like a childhood dream of like, oh, I played video games, so I tried it, and
Yeah.
and yours is much more logical, thought out. You're like, well, this I could be programming for the bank, or I could be programming for myself. So
Yeah.
my next question on your history in game development is, what are some of your favorite video games of all time?
Oh yeah, dude, such a good question. It's It's so hard. You can't see it, but I have a shelf right here, and it has my
Nice.
old NES Nintendo system sitting on it,
Okay.
and that was like the first console that I grew up playing with my older sisters, and
Wow.
like I remember playing the original Super Mario and Duck Hunt and
Oh man, you were
the
really on the originals.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and like the original Zelda that had like the gold cartridge that you would put
Mm-hmm.
in. It's yeah. So that was like my first exposure to video games, and I loved it because it was something that, even though my sisters are like 4 years and 6 years older than me, and so
Okay, yeah.
I think
Makes
it was a
sense.
good equalizer where it was like, oh, we can sit down and like it almost it was it we had a similar skill gap, playing video games,
Yeah,
because it's
yeah.
like if we go outside and like play basketball, it's like they would just like dunk on me. So
Yeah,
I
yeah, yeah.
I think that's partially why I enjoyed it initially.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's so awesome.
Yeah. But that's like earliest. I think favorite,
Mhm.
man, I my interest in video games has progressed so strangely. As I
Yeah?
get older, I'm more into indie games.
Oh,
Like
yeah.
I hardly play AAA games or
Mhm.
like big titles. I'm much more interested in like the smaller things uh
Mhm.
that people come up with. But
Mm.
I think probably my favorite game of all time has to be Zelda: The Wind Waker.
Oh, that's such a good
Yeah,
choice. I
yeah.
know me and you have had this discussion, off camera before, about some of our favorite games, and he was telling me that he does not play AAA games, and I've been trying to convince him to get certain Nintendo games, especially since he's a Wind Waker fan over here.
Hmm.
But that is such a good pick. I mean, that's like it's tied for my favorite Zelda game. I like Twilight Princess and Wind Waker are like just the exact same to me. I honestly think I
Yeah.
like Wind Waker just a little bit better.
Hmm.
It's like my favorite. So that's such a good pick, man.
Yeah. It's so
Yeah.
good. I love that you like Twilight Princess and Wind Waker
Yeah.
equally,
Yeah.
because their tone and mood of those games are so drastically different.
It's so good. I
Yeah.
think like I think one of the this is on to kind of a game design topic, but I think that like when you nail, it doesn't matter what the tone is. Like if you choose a tone and you're consistent in the tone and then you like nail it, it just comes through as I feel like you experience the game just a little bit better. There's a lot of games now that don't really know what they want to be, and like Twilight Princess has a very certain tone, and it's
Mhm.
like deep without all of the game design and all of the dialogue and the character design, and the same thing with the Wind Waker and stuff. And I don't think the newer Zeldas have that same kind of feel, especially going to Tears of the Kingdom when it's kind of just like, oh, here's just the same thing. This is kind of like what Breath of the Wild should have been originally, type of thing. And I'm like, sometimes even older games that might not look as good or play as well now, they had a certain feeling that you just can't beat. And I think tone is what's missing in a lot of modern games. So
Yeah.
that's pretty cool that you like that. I was just going to dive into some of your feelings on what games made you like into the developer you are. Like, where are your inspirations from, and like what kind of aspirations do you have? Like, what kind of game would you like to make in the future? This is kind of
Ooh.
jumping ahead in questions, but it kind of leads off what we were just talking about.
Yeah, man, there's so much loaded into that. I
Yeah,
remember.
sorry.
Yeah, no, I love it. Game development's awesome because it's so uh like democratized now. Like anybody can go on and learn how to make video games. And I remember it was probably like 10 years ago. I would watch YouTube videos of the couple indie developers that would post on YouTube, and they would be working on some of these games. Like I watched a bunch of Tom Francis's videos. He made Gunpoint and Heat Signature,
Mm-hmm.
and also Thin Matrix was really early on in the scene. He made Equilinox, and like just their watching them form ideas and then try implementing them, and then come across errors or like emergent gameplay that they weren't expecting. That it's like it
Yeah.
was just so appealing to me. But I think those games in particular, I was like, oh, like it's almost like watching how like hot dogs are made, But
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
it's like,
yeah.
oh, you get to see like the dirty like
Yeah.
behind the scenes. But I was like, I think I could do that.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah,
Wow, that's really really cool. I never had the same experience. I did not start watching. I guess like by the time I had already decided to become a game developer was like when I'm like, oh, now I need to go find some people to give me some tutorials because this will get down just a little bit. I'm going to ask you about some of your, a little bit more into your education. You kind of already hit on it, but like I went to college for game design, and I felt like I wasn't learning enough, and I kind of was like just starting to look stuff up, and then that's how I found some of the earliest creators. And some of the guys I watch tutorials from, like they don't do current stuff now, or it's like completely different than the people I do watch now. So that's very interesting that you
mhm.
saw that and thought, wow, this is pretty cool, I would like to do that myself, you know.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah,
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. So, on your aspirational game, is there some type of game that you would like to make
yeah.
down the road in the future?
Yeah, I'm at a hard spot right now because for those who don't know, I recently quit my full-time job where I was doing Unity game development for a game studio, and now I'm on my own, creating my own games and trying to make a living off of that. And part of my strategy for that is creating numerous smaller scoped games so that I can see if
Smart.
they can aggregate, yeah, and see if they can aggregate into what could amount to a full time income for a few titles distributed across a number of different platforms. Um, so part of that means that all of these big ideas that I have to bench for now, which is kind of sad. But I also think that there's more creativity when you're scoped uh, into something really small. So
Hmm.
it's I'm okay with it because I know it hopefully won't be forever, and hopefully I'll be able to be financially viable enough to where I can work on some of these larger scoped games. But the type of games that I would love to work on are like 3D platform like puzzle games. Like you're controlling a
Nice.
character, like work on movement and traversal um and like complex levels. I think that that would be super fun.
Yeah.
And I have some really fun themes that I think would work really well.
Mm.
But I'm not willing to talk about those just yet
Oh
because
yeah.
I don't want to open Pandora's box because I know it's gonna be a while before I get to work on them.
Yeah, yeah, you can't get people too excited and ready because then I feel like that's my problem. It's just my tidbit to you. I will announce stuff way too early, and then it's like a running meme gag with my fans now. They will be like, half of them will say, Pitterpot 2, Christmas 2030, and they'll like question mark it or whatever,
Yeah.
because I'll be like, oh, we're doing this, but I'm like, I
No,
haven't started it yet. Oh,
yeah,
well, we're
yeah.
doing it, So.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Hey
keep
man, if Bethesda can do it with Elder Scrolls 6, then
why
we
can't
can do
TreeFall
it. Yeah.
Studios do
Yeah,
it? Yeah,
exactly.
exactly. So keep your ideas close to your chest and just surprise them down the line. This is perfect.
Mhm.
It goes right into our next section, going a little bit about how you got into your career as an indie game developer. You just
Mhm.
mentioned you were working at a studio. So, from my knowledge and from what I'm aware, I don't know if you want to say publicly where it was, so I'm not going to. But from my knowledge, it's basically like a double A studio. Would you
Mhm.
say that's a double A indie?
Yeah, yeah,
Is
definitely.
Yeah.
It's like between 50 and 100 employees.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so it's not full AAA, but he's at a studio that was doing retail releases and partnered with companies like Nintendo and other companies like that. So this is a larger studio. So my main question to you is, how did you get started there? How did you find that job? And then we're gonna move into what made you leave that job to start all on your own. So.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. It was a long process because I had formal education for programming, but for all game dev related skills, I was self-taught. So everything that I knew about Unity, everything I knew about gameplay programming, um, it I had to prove to myself or prove to potential employers that I could actually get the job done.
Mm,
Um, and so that required me putting together an online portfolio. I published a few mobile games just so that I could show a potential employer that I was able to finish games and go through the process of even doing things like incorporating third-party SDKs into a
Oh, wow.
project so that they can serve ads and
Mhm.
like in-app purchases and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
which was like pretty technical stuff that made me bang my head against the desk more than once.
Yeah.
But yeah, that so yeah, putting together a portfolio as I was gaining the skills required to do a job like this full time. Um, and then actually applying for jobs, I applied for a lot of jobs. I was
Did you really?
initially I was not picky at all. I was like, I just want to work in Unity. Well, because the thing is
Mhm.
I was working full time and then I would try and learn game development
Yeah.
after work hours. So it was evenings and weekends, still trying to maintain a social life and all of that.
Mhm.
So my idea was, well, if I could just get into any job that lets me open the Unity game engine for 8 hours a day, then I'm just going to learn so much.
Yeah.
And so that was my goal. So I just applied. I looked up every different type of job board, and sent a bunch of different resumes and cover letters and connected with people and got some phone screenings and online interviews and stuff. But it wasn't until I decided to start looking at Twitter as a potential job board for game development that
Wow.
I got connected to. Yeah, it's like that's the hack. Like I made a YouTube video about this, but it's like
Oh.
it's the hack. Because game studios want to search uh their circles of game dev acquaintances before they start posting for randos to just
Yeah, yeah.
apply to the job. So I just did some Twitter searching for the keywords Unity and hiring, and I
Mhm.
got connected with this lady who was just passing along this opening at the studio she worked for. And because
Wow.
when I applied, I said, "Oh, I was talking to so and so on Twitter, and she said I should apply," which automatically brought my resume to the top of the stack, and then I got
Yeah.
an interview, and um, yeah, it just worked out, and it was a great studio. I really enjoyed working there.
Mhm.
And I just yeah, it was exactly what I envisioned. I learned so much every day. Yeah.
Wow, that's awesome. Yeah, you at least you got a good experience out of it. It's not like you
Yeah.
quit out of hatred, you
Yeah,
know?
totally.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, that's how
Yeah.
you wanna be. That's the good attitude to take,
Yeah.
wherever you go, of course,
Yeah.
so that's awesome. So what made you decide to leave this wonderful job that you learned so much at?
Yeah,
Yeah.
dude. People think that I am nuts for quitting my job.
They're like, "Ooh, hoo, hoo, hoo."
Yeah, exactly. Especially because for a lot of people, it's like the dream job, you know? It's
Yeah,
like
I was gonna say.
I was working remotely from home
Okay.
and working on some really cool projects. The game
Mhm.
studio that I was at, we would do mobile games and console games, and so like some variety there. And
Yeah.
it, yeah, but it's such a multifaceted thing that made me want to quit.
Mm.
I'll try and unpack a lot of it.
You can, we've got the time.
Yeah,
We're making good time, really.
awesome, cool.
Yeah, yeah, go ahead.
So I think the first thing is I wanted more creative freedom.
Mhm.
So as a programmer at a game studio,
Mm.
we weren't a super small team, so I was very much in my lane. There we had multiple game designers, we had multiple artists, and we had project managers, and I was very much like everybody else makes the decisions, and then they pass those plans along to me, and then I
Yeah.
implement them,
Yep,
which
yep.
is fantastic for learning. But as I
Mhm.
was getting more competent in my programming skills, it was like, okay, I want to start making some decisions because I think that I can design some really cool features.
Mhm.
So that was part of it. I thought, okay, I want to spend more time making my own games because I think I have the technical capacity to make stuff that's pretty cool.
Mhm.
That was the first thing. Um, the second thing, which is probably the biggest factor, was time.
Mm.
S- Uh, I had um, the the location freedom. Like I was able to
Mhm.
work from home, and I got some really cool I got some really cool work lifestyle balance off of that. Like my
Hmm.
wife and I would go camping sometimes, and I would just like bring my laptop with me and just work at the campsite.
Oh, that's
And like
amazing.
as long as I got my work done and had an internet connection for meetings, I could go do some really fun stuff and travel. Like for the holidays, I could just, if we were staying
Hmm.
with my in-laws, I could just bring my laptop with me. And um, so so
Yeah.
I had the location independence, but I didn't have the time independence. And so I was still required to clock in by a certain time and put in 8 hours a day. Um, and I really wanted to be flexible because my wife's job is not really it's not very consistent, and so I would
Hmm.
love to be able to match my work hours with hers. And so that was a big factor. And another huge factor is that we are expecting a little baby girl here soon. And so with
Oh.
both me and my wife working full time and having a newborn on the way, we were trying to figure out, okay, that was an even more a
Hmm.
bigger motivation to try and free up my work schedule so that I could work when is most convenient rather than
All the
in eight
time.
hour blocks. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, yeah, and it was a hard decision because, like I said, I liked the place that I worked. I liked my coworkers. The project that I was on was sick.
Hmm.
Um, so it But yeah, those I mean, yeah, time and uh creative freedom I think were big ones. And then I think you pointed out earlier, I do kind of have like an entrepreneurial spirit. So
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
like more fulfilling for me to like be able to work on something that
Mm.
like be self-directed in that way. So,
Hmm. Yeah, because I mean, not everyone has that. I mean, there's a lot of people that do try to do the indie thing, but don't really want to, creatively lead the team, and they kind of want to start a studio with, friends, for instance. So, I think it's pretty cool. You're similar to me that we both have that creative drive of like I would like to, lead the team, grow your company. I'm assuming you would like to grow your indie studio eventually. What kind of aspirations do you have for your studio size now?
yeah, that's
It's kind of
right
jumping ahead
now.
again, but
Yeah, no, it's
yeah,
fine. I I'm very narrow scoped in like my future right now. Like
yeah, yeah, of course.
I almost feel like this is like, that my situation isn't permanent. Like I'm not a permanent self-employed indie developer.
Oh
Right
yeah.
now, I'm living on borrowed time. And if I can't prove to make like a viable income doing what I'm doing, then I'm gonna have to go back and get a job or do more consulting work or um,
Hmm.
you know, figure out another way to pay the bills. So I'm not thinking that far ahead right now. I'm just thinking like, man, I would love to make minimum wage. That's like my goal. So
Nice.
yeah,
Yeah, because I was gonna say, to be honest, in my opinion, all indie developers are just on borrowed time.
yeah,
I mean, because basically that's how it goes. I mean, any one project. I mean, you're seeing it. This is way down in our discussion, but you're seeing it in the AAA space now, where one bad project can just tank a whole studio.
yeah,
Because budgets and costs are so high, and we're going to be talking about that a little bit deeper now. So, in terms of indie studios, one project for either one of us could sink us potentially, because if you spend a long time on one and you don't make the money that you need to make, well, it's going to take X amount of time to get another project ready, and that might not
yep,
be, we might not have enough money saved up to go full time for that
yep,
entire development cycle. So
yep,
yeah, we're all on borrowed time for sure.
yeah, definitely. And
Yeah.
like, I I appreciate the way that you're doing game development because you are self-publishing on numerous platforms, and
Yeah.
that's not something that I see a lot of indie devs doing.
Hmm.
Um, and I have been doing it for a couple of months, getting all of the different platforms set up and connections
Yeah.
made and applying for all these different consoles and platforms. And like I get it. It's not an easy task.
No, no, it takes a good bit. I got a bunch of questions about that,
Mm,
for you specifically. So we can go down that path just a little bit more. My before we start talking about the actual nitty gritty of some of this, my question was like, what is your overall thoughts and experience that you can share with the audience and everyone that how you felt going from that studio. You know, we talked about why you wanted to do it. And we're working on, you're working on getting your games out and creating that income. But what is your thought process like? What do you feel after doing it yourself?
Yeah.
Going from the job, starting the studio, and all these things. Is it what you expected? Is it more than
Yeah.
what you thought?
Yeah.
Is it your cup of tea after all?
Yeah.
How are you feeling
Yeah.
about being the leader of Set Sail Games?
Yeah. Oh man, I have been looking forward to it for a while,
Hmm.
and I was really excited to like put in my 2 weeks notice at my job,
Yeah.
and then just wake up one morning and just be like, wow, I am in control of my own destiny, and just like feel that freedom,
Yeah.
and it never happened.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
I woke up after my last day at my job and I was like, I am
In trouble.
uh yeah, exactly. That's exactly it. I'm like, it's like there's a lot of freedom when you like dive into the ocean
Hmm.
and then like you look around and realize that you're like out in the middle of the ocean and your boat has like sailed away. It's,
Yes. Yeah.
oh,
That's a great analogy.
yeah, it's like
Oh
I
my gosh.
have all the freedom, but I better start swimming or I'm done. So,
Yeah. You only got so
yeah.
much air before you're gonna
Yeah.
drown before you make it
Yeah.
to the next island.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
so I didn't
It's
get that
crazy.
immense amount of like relief, but it has been like
Hmm.
a good fire under me to just start working
Hmm.
and like I've been before me quitting my job, I had been working remotely for about 5 years. So I'm used to putting in the hours and being disciplined with my
Hmm.
work day, and like making sure that I'm sticking to my work schedule. But yeah, man, it's funny. I'm excited, but I was expecting more relief. But now I'm just like, all right, it's go time. Like we gotta get
Yeah.
moving. Yeah.
Yeah, that fire that you're talking about, and it's go time. That's like where I'm at right now. I just feel that all the time. I try to explain it to my wife because she's like, "All right, so when's the next big check coming in?" And I'm like,
Hmm.
"It's go time." It's
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
feel like,
Exactly.
it's go time. Yeah,
Uh,
gotta get moving. Yeah.
yep.
So, oh, so funny. I just love to have, conversations with other people who experience, what I experience with my job and this company and stuff because not that many people know, what it's like to just completely just ditch everything and say, this is what I'm going to do right now and this is what I've got to do, like
Yep.
they actually have responsibilities, bills in a life, you got to make this dream work. There's a lot of people who start indie games while they're still living with their parents or while they're in college. I did some of that
Mhm.
when I was in college, just part time, all that kind of stuff. So you see people post all these happy posts, oh, indie dev, hashtag, and
Yeah.
they're just showing their slow progress on Twitter. And then I'm like,
Hmm.
bro, we gotta go.
Yeah.
It's
Exactly.
like this
Yeah.
game's got to come out now because
Yep. Yep.
everyone's like, man, you go too fast, and I'm like, dude, don't you have to pay bills?
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. If you don't have a publisher or an investor bankrolling you, then
yep.
you're dependent on, getting titles out. So
Getting it done and getting your
yep.
sales in. So
Yep.
that's a perfect segue because I was going to ask you, guys, if you have not picked up his new game, Tanks But No Tanks is now available on Steam. You just launched just a little bit over a week ago. Tell us about your Steam launch. I know you got videos on your channel talking about this, but how did the
Mhm.
Steam launch go? How did you feel about it? Was it easier or harder than you thought? And then we'll talk about some of the sales and if that hit your expectations and whatnot.
Yeah, man, it's been a long time coming because this tanks game I started 3 years ago,
Oh my
and
gosh.
yeah,
I was gonna
so
I was gonna say I have some
yeah,
questions about like the dev time after this, but I'm like,
yeah,
whoa, that's way more than
yeah.
I thought it was.
Yeah. Well, it's because I
Yeah.
I started it. I made a video about this too. It's about scope creep,
Yeah,
and
yeah, yeah.
it's this project. I thought it was going to be a weekend project because I was playing that
Don't
old
we
Wii
all?
Tanks game. Yeah, exactly. I was playing that old Wii Tanks game, and I was like,
Yeah.
oh, this is fun. Like this would
Yeah.
be a really good just like little hackathon project to try and make, bullets ricocheting off of walls and make some
Mm-hmm.
simple levels. And I was like, I
Yeah,
could
yeah.
recreate this game. And that's how it started. But the problem is I started it almost simultaneously with when I started my new job as a
Mm.
full-time Unity developer. And so my skills were climbing exponentially, and
Yep.
which meant that I wanted to make this tanks game better and better. And I wasn't working on it
Yep.
consistently at all. I would go months and months without touching it. It was just
Mm-hmm.
like it was just on the side, and
Yeah.
something that I would do for fun. And I was like, oh, maybe I'll finish it. Maybe I'll publish it. I'm just kind of messing around with it.
Yeah, yeah,
But
yeah.
it went through. It had 3 or 4 major design pivots where it became a
Mm.
completely different game until eventually I settled on like a local multiplayer, like
Yeah,
just
yeah.
fight against each other battle arena.
Yeah.
Yeah, dude. So
Yeah.
all that to say, it's been a long time coming, and man, there's something to be said about being able to tie a knot on a project,
Oh, yeah.
because so many people just keep they do what I do, they just keep iterating, and they're like, well, this
Forever.
isn't fun, and so they make it different, and they're like, oh, this is fun, and then they realize, oh, I'm not having fun anymore. Let's change it and make it even better.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah.
So the launch went really, really good. I wasn't I just actually published a YouTube video this morning about the results from my launch week.
Nice,
And I
nice.
go over all the different stats, um and I in the creation and editing of this YouTube video, it gave me some really good time to reflect on like how the launch
Mm-hmm.
went.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
and I was really, really pleasantly surprised at the amount of sales and support that I got from people.
Yeah.
I launched with less than 500 wish lists,
Mm.
and I think after 1 week it was about $550 that I had made before all of the cuts and stuff.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and people were sending.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's awesome.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Um, the there's so much to it. I
Mm-hmm.
will say this, man. When I first started the process to put a game on Steam, I was reading the documentation about build pipelines and depots and
So
like,
confusing.
yeah, all of this like
Yeah.
particular language that
Mm-hmm.
Steam has you go through. And I will say that like comparatively, after I've started doing the same for different consoles, I'm like, oh, Steam seems a lot easier to me.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I'm glad I started with Steam, and now I'm like learning all these other processes for all of these other
Yeah.
platforms.
No, I totally understand. I mean, I kind of think that Steam is still complicated because, you kind of have to get like for I guess I don't know who makes it. I don't know if it was specifically the Unity people or whatever, but like well, I don't know. There's like, when you first get your game up to Steam, it's like it feels like when you're reading all the documentation that everything is confusing and it's all code and like lingo and all this stuff. And I'm like, I don't know anything about PC and stuff. But like once you finally do it, it's like, oh, it's not too bad once you figure it out. I personally think like the PlayStation and stuff is like also pretty clear. And then I'm like, dude, I just feel like that. Like I had your exact experience. You're like thankful that you started on Steam because like PlayStation and Xbox and stuff is more confusing than Steam. But I'm like, for me, I started on the Wii U, and back on those days, Nintendo didn't even have like documentation. Like their dev portal like didn't even really exist. I mean, I
Yeah,
was like
yeah.
doing stuff like, it's like over email, and there was like all these different tools you had to use in order to get it to where you needed to go. Basically, it was highly confusing. And, the one thing I would say, like, I was thankful for with Nintendo was like, I was an idiot. And every single time I ran into a problem, I was like, I need you to explain this to me like I'm five.
Yeah.
you, you
Yeah.
know and then
Please help me.
somebody would,
Mhm.
somebody would. And then
Yeah.
like that's one of the problems I had with Xbox. We'll get down in our discussion. There's a lot of those moments where I ran into stuff and I'm like, I don't know how to do this, and I would be like, explain this to me like I'm five.
Yeah.
And then like their answers would be like, it's explained right there. and i'm
Yeah.
and I'm like,
Oh, no.
okay. Talk to
Yeah.
me like I'm two.
Yeah,
you,
exactly.
you know, like dumb it down a little bit more.
Yep, yep.
So that's pretty cool. I'm glad you enjoyed your Steam experience and that you've learned from it, and that's kind of helping you move towards into your next platforms. That
Yep.
brings me into some new questions. You are on Steam. I know there's some certain platforms that you're targeting next, but would you like to tell everybody what are your next platforms you're targeting? What's your experience like moving into all of those arenas from going from publishing on Steam and all of
Yep.
that?
Yeah. Man, currently we'll see how things flesh out, but currently I want to get my Tanks game on Steam, PlayStation, Xbox, and Atari VCS. Those are the ones that I currently have on my timeline.
It's
And
a lot.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's but
Yeah.
it's awesome because
Yeah.
I and this kind of leads back to like doing this full time. This
Hmm.
like getting set up with all these different infrastructures and learning there's so much that goes into like domain knowledge for each platform. I could have never done this while I was working full time, but
Yeah.
worst case,
Oh yeah.
what I could see myself doing is like if I have to go back and get a 9 to 5 job, I will still have all of these like these pathways
Hmm.
already open to me, and so I think it'll be easier for me to work on a game part time and then port them to these different consoles.
Hmm.
We'll see how it goes. I'm still pretty early on in the process. I haven't shipped anything on any console yet, so I'm still learning as I go.
Yeah.
Um,
And just to interject, I'd say like you're doing pretty good at this stage. You're doing better than I was, back at that stage in terms of like, community building and, followers and the amount of income you already got off Steam. It's coming in pretty fast. Like, in my opinion, I think you'll be all right once you get it on to all the platforms. My opinion.
mhm.
I think that like for your next release, try to do them all like simultaneously so you have like a
Yep.
big launch and all that stuff.
Mhm.
So you have all in your first month you're not just getting that one Steam check, you're getting the PlayStation check and the
Yep.
Xbox and all that and stuff. So I think once you work those in and get all your processes learned and like down pat so you can go faster, you're gonna be golden and sitting pretty. You're gonna be setting sail into the
Yeah.
into the pretty high water seas of
That's
independence.
that's
Uh
one of the reasons that I landed on that game studio name because
huh.
I really like the idea of you are like setting off away from the docks and
Mm.
you don't know if your ship will hold water. It's like is your vessel
uh,
seaworthy that you
yeah,
have no idea, but you're
yeah.
gonna go find out. So
That's so awesome.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I do like the name. And we're going to be talking about seaworthy vessels in just a little bit when we're getting farther into our instability discussion. So,
Yeah.
oh my goodness. So yeah, I guess my last question, we kind of touched on this already. It's gonna be my last question for like getting to know you and your process, so the audience can really know where you're coming from. You kind of already half answered this, and I was gonna say most of my audience is TreeFall Studios fans, but there's a lot of people who found us recently who are learning about game development and trying to get different opinions on, could they do this as well? How do they get started? So, you told me a little bit about your 3-year timeline. I was going to ask specifically, what was the stage? Like, how long did you decide at your job from when you decided to quit? How long did you stay at your job before you started? How long did it take to get the business started up? Like, what was
Mhm.
your planning stages? What was your overall development time to get to Steam launch? Just the whole start
Yeah.
to finish. Just elaborate on that just briefly. I know you already kind of touched on it a little bit,
Mhm.
but yeah.
Yeah, I think the main thing that I would want to convey to other people who are learning game development
Yeah.
and are considering trying to do it full time is it varies so much, and you need to just take stock of the responsibilities in your life because that's what it came down to for me. I have
Mhm.
um, I'm starting a family. I have a baby that's coming here pretty soon. I have
Love
a
it.
wife. I have a mortgage. And it's like this kind of stuff is it's like it's a big boy game, you know, and so you need to take stock of making sure that um, you don't do anything foolish. And so I'm kind of riding that line, but I think I'm in a good spot. We made sure that we set ourselves up for a financial runway where we have a safety net and some savings. So
Yeah, smart,
um,
smart.
yeah, so that's the biggest thing that I would say. As far as like getting everything set up, it one thing that I found that was super useful is to start multiple things at once, because like
Mm.
applying to different consoles, and you finish part one of a application, you send like a pitch deck to one platform, and then you're waiting to hear back, and you're emailing with these other people, and it's like every day I'm constantly just pushing the needle forward in little ways across
Yeah,
like
yeah.
three different platforms right now. So that's something that it's a long process, but it doesn't always take like all of your attention,
Yeah,
if
yeah.
that makes sense.
Yeah.
Um, and then as far as like my road up to my Steam release, it took me a couple of months to get the game squared away to where I felt like it was in a publishable state. So I had been like working on it part time for years.
Mhm.
And then once I started working on it full time, I just sped through the rest of the development. And there were some things that um, like big features that I had to code, but it took me a couple of months focusing on that and getting it ready for the Steam launch. So
That's pretty awesome, man. Now, that's a little bit of an intro into my good friend Thomas, guys. We're going to get ready to start discussing game development. But before we do that, I have to thank the sponsor of today's video, and that would be me. Bec- because we don't actually have any actual sponsorships. So if you guys are liking this content, be sure to hit the like button, subscribe if you're new, and if you want to support us even further, guys, you can do it with monetary means by following us on Patreon. I got to give a huge shout out to everybody who supports TreeFall Studios on patreon.com. I got to give a personal shout out to Carmen Red, Shark and Minnow, PLP, and Thomas Stewart. This guy right here, a proud patron of TreeFall Studios. So if you guys are interested, you want to get shout outs and videos like this, you can check out the links down below. Now we are going to get into our actual topic of discussion for today, and that is game development, the game industry instability. It seems like we are seeing a lot of instability. I mean, in a lot of markets all over the world, the game industry is just catching up. But currently, we're seeing increased prices, failing companies, massive layoffs in the AAA space, indie studios and AA studios just completely closing. In some instances, AAA studios are closing. We're seeing problems with game development tools. There's a lot going on with the engines right now, and everything besides engines. We got increased prices in other tools, art tools, suites like that, stuff like that. Unity's had some huge stuff in the news recently. If you're following this channel, you've probably heard about it. And if you've been on YouTube, you've probably heard about it, even if you didn't even know what Unity was. You saw some
Mhm.
people getting really mad for about a couple of weeks. And then right after that, instead of following up with good marketing and saying, hey, come to the Unreal Engine, instead of doing that, they just laid off 900 people and then they fired their entire online learning team. So people are looking around and trying to find, okay, how do I get into game development? Can I make it full time? What tools do I use? What company can I trust? Everyone's going out of business and everyone's losing their jobs. So we're going to be discussing some of these topics today, and you're going to be getting my opinion and Thomas's opinion. If you've been following the channel, you should know a little bit about me and where I come from, and that I've been running an indie studio for a while now, and you know that Thomas is newly running an indie studio. So here's some opinions from some noobs.
Oh, nice. I love it.
uh,
Such a
uh,
lighthearted topic.
yeah, of course. Of course, episode 1 is like doom and gloom.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
plenty of things to talk about, but I'm like, well, this is, to me, it's very pressing on the news and stuff like that in terms of game development. And, like just this morning, they announced that the CEO of Unity is retiring, effective
Mm-hmm.
immediately. That
Yeah.
doesn't really feel like retiring to me. I
Mm-hmm.
think he got booted out the door as fast as he could.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, it's just shakeups like that are all over. We're going to be
Yeah.
talking about the individual platform holders, Sony and Nintendo and Xbox, and they're also all going through shakeups. Xbox is going through merger acquisitions. The CEO of PlayStation is also stepping down. So, there's
Yeah.
just a bunch of shakeups going on in the industry. There's a lot of weird things going on where consumers are a little confused on where the direction of video games are going. There's a lot of
Mhm.
predatory monetization practices in games, and a lot of those studios are going bust. There's talk of the all digital future. Consumers are confused. Game developers are confused. So we're here to just have it out together.
We're here to clear up all of the confusion.
Yeah, all of it. In any confusion you had, we're here to just answer all of those questions.
Yeah, exactly.
So my first
Oh
question
man.
is, with that kind of segue started, are you worried about the video game development industry, good sir?
Honestly, I feel like well, I mean, it depends how you define video game industry, you
Hmm.
know? It's like are you talking about the studios and getting people laid off? Are you talking about the quality of games that are coming out? Are you talking
Hmm.
about the potential monopolization of a single platform over others? It's like there's
All
a
of the
lot that
above.
goes into what do you think is happening with the video game industry?
Yeah, yeah.
I think personally, I have seen all of these headlines and all of the instability, and it just reaffirms my decision to leave my job
Hmm.
uh, because it makes me people. I made a, a YouTube video about me quitting my job to
Yeah.
make my own video games, and some people were quite opinionated about that, especially
I'm
knowing that I
sure.
yeah
Yeah.
like and it's fair. People are trying to give me like a fair heads up. They're like, dude, don't do it. Like
Yeah.
you're not gonna make it. Like you have a kid on the way. Like what are you doing?
You're not gonna
And I'm
make it.
like, yeah, fair enough, fair enough.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But when I look around and I see people getting laid off out of nowhere, with
Yeah.
zero warning, and
Yeah.
it's happening like dozens and dozens of times.
It's
I just
multiple
think
times
like,
weekly.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. There's it just makes me realize that there is no such thing as a safe job,
Yeah.
especially in the games industry.
Yeah.
And so, even though right now I'm at a very volatile and quote unquote unsafe position in my
Hmm.
career, I still feel like trying to build uh, my own little niche in the game industry is going to work out better for me in the long run. So,
Yeah. No, I totally agree. I'm as worried. You mentioned a bunch of topics, right away. And most of those I am worried about.
yeah.
Because I'm like, quality of games is one you mentioned. I do think, it's easy for me to say, oh, all these games suck because people might think my games suck. It's kind of hard to judge as an indie game
Yeah,
developer.
yeah.
You know, if anyone knows my story, like I started off releasing a game that was considered to be one of the worst games of the year, and I just continued moving up and taking constructive criticism. And basically, I knew, like at this point, like I know what makes a good game or what makes a bad game. And a lot of the times when people might suggest something to me, that like, oh, your game should do this, it's just because I don't really have the skills for it yet, or I don't know how, or I haven't gotten, like I didn't have the complete amount of time. Like we were just talking about, we're on borrowed time. Like I could not implement feature like as deep as they're wanting it, because it wouldn't fit the scope of the type of game that I'm creating. So
Yeah.
I feel like I do have a good grasp on what makes games good and what makes games bad. And I feel like that's visible throughout my game development career as my games increase in quality. But I feel like, as far as the AAA space and even the indie space, that games are, there's like gems that are coming out. Like there's a lot of great games that came out this year that are super high quality. So I'm not saying that games are just, stop, like all games stink now. But there's a huge portion that are not really, created now fun. They're not created
Hmm.
for designed to be fun. They're created to just make money. These games are designed around microtransactions and you know practices like that. A lot of those games are the ones going bust, but they're not the only ones going bust. There's just AAA games just going bust just because budgets are too big now. But
Hmm.
I am worried about the quality. I feel like most of the time it's just designed around money, or like if there's like two problems I see with the game industry, and I don't know if you agree. And like these are the two biggest ones that I see in terms of game quality. And it's like one, either everyone is making the game for money and they're just building it all around battle passes and multiplayer and all that kind of stuff. Most of that's your free to play games, but it doesn't have to be. They could be like lower budget, like $30 games, and it's still built around the battle pass, and you have to play timed and stuff, all about wasting your time. And you have to be on the game for them to make money, so they're trying to
Hmm.
addict you with time mechanics, which I hate. But then also, I feel like now budgets on the budget side, game quality is shrinking because these game budgets are so big that no one's really allowed to experiment anymore. That
Hmm.
everyone basically has to just copy what works. And the game development cycles are so long that you're seeing games come out now that are just copies of games that were like here 8 years ago.
Yep.
So yeah, that's kind of my thought. I'm a little worried about the games and their quality. They're just kind of copying each other, and everyone, you see it all the time in reviews now, that people complain that this is the exact same thing as something they've already played, or just go play this game instead. I see that all the time in reviews, and I'm like, well, still, there's like two ways to look at it. I'm like, well, a lot of people did work on that game for a long time, and there might be some fun to be had in the game, but I do feel like that games were better, or they used to be better. Not that you have to completely innovate, every single time. You can just make a fun game. You don't have to reinvent the wheel,
Yep.
every single time. But I do agree with you. Game quality does seem makes me more nervous, because if all the games are starting to be perceived as bad and people start buying them less and less and studios
Hmm.
continue to close, that's going to create less revenue for these platform holders, which we are pretty much reliant on. Because, if you know anything about my history in studio, and I talk about it on my videos all the time, sure, we make some money on Steam. You guys can find the links down below. You can pick up a game on Steam and play it and enjoy it, but we don't even come close to making a full-time living on Steam, and we only make a full-time living because of our other console ports that we do. The Steam income is nice to have as icing on the cake, but it's not enough. And I feel like Steam will just keep going indefinitely. They'll just keep running it as far as they can, as far as Valve is making money. I think they'll continue to be the dominant PC marketplace.
Hmm.
But, the console industry is looking a little fickle, because it costs more money to make games for consoles. And I don't mean just for developers like us, where we have to buy dev kits, but I mean for AAA studios who are paying for retail space and doing manufacturing distribution and spending all this time learning multiple ecosystems to port their games to. And then if all these games are perceived as not good, and they're not actually making profitability, then they're all closing, and then we're going to be seeing less and less profits for the console holders. So, it's just it does make me a little worried.
Yeah, and it's this. I haven't been behind the scenes when it comes to like a AAA title, but I have
Hmm.
been in meetings where uh, I've been working on professional games, typically mobile games, where the
Hmm.
discussion is not okay. How can we design this game to be more fun or appealing to the player? It's about okay, how can we keep the player on the screen for 2 seconds longer than they are right now, And it's
Yeah,
like,
I
oh,
hate I hate that.
it's just who wins in that situation, It's I don't think it's
Yeah,
the player because even
yeah.
if they do stay longer, it feels more like a psychological trick than like they actually want to be playing the game?
Yeah, the psychological trick stuff really has like grinded my gears like over the last couple of years, because there's some things that I've started to notice in not just game design. I mean, it's all in game design, and it's infected, more heavily, I would say, like PlayStation and Xbox game design more than Nintendo. But even Nintendo themselves have started to put some of these like mobile elements, the time, extended type of, sign in this many, like Splatoon, for instance. The catalog is basically like a battle pass. You have to sign in every day to get a win. And like, I would like to play Splatoon every day, for a while, but then, I might go on a kick, but like I might go months without playing it
Hmm.
and then be like, oh, shoot, the season is ending and I need the stuff that I'm never going to be able to get again in the battle pass. So like I got to go play it a bunch, even though like it wasn't the game I wanted to play that day. So even all the way into Nintendo, it's infected their design just a little bit, even though they're not like directly monetizing that like these other companies are doing.
Hmm.
Addictive psychological trick design. Also, it's just a complete side note. I don't know how you feel about this, but I feel like achievement systems are the exact same thing. Um,
Oh. Hmm.
because, like, for me, like, I had a period where I was like, so I grew up playing Nintendo, for as long as, since the GameCube. And to me, I still like Nintendo the most, and I like the Switch the most because I'm like, it's just about a game. You just put in a game and you play it, and if you don't want to beat it, you don't have to. You can just get rid of it, sell it, or whatever. But ever since I don't think this was the original intent for the like Xbox achievement system, but it's totally morphed into like it's a psychological reward. You get a noise ding. It's like you're training the Pavlov's dog. Congratulations, keep going. You're achieving things. Keep going.
Hmm.
And the fact that you can't get rid of them, like I have some OCD issues where like when I look at my games list and I see all these uncompleted games, they're sitting around in my mind like, oh,
Hmm.
even if it's a game I hate, I feel like, oh, I have to go beat that. I need to go get all those trophies because I left something unfinished. And
Yep.
I know that there's a lot of people in like the trophy hunting community that like go through similar burnout or phase or whatever where they don't like it. So like I personally don't even really like achievements in games. Like
Hmm.
I thought about this, but it's just kind of interesting because like different players handle it differently. Some people think it's fun. Like they think, oh, this is like some extra challenges to go for. I already like this game. They'll just go for it and they'll make the game more fun. Some people will say, and like, who cares? Some people just don't care about them at all. They'll just let them, who cares? They don't need to get them. Doesn't bother them whatsoever. And then like I have periods, and I know there's plenty of players like me who are like, oh, they got so used to getting them all and they completed so many games that they feel bad, leaving some games finished. And I know
Hmm.
that there are some discussions like by developers about that. I kind of like that Valve, like on Steam, you can still release a game even without achievements. Like you can
Hmm.
choose to not do that.
Hmm.
Um, and I've thought about doing that, but then like I do have fans who are like, no, they like achieving the hard stuff. They want me to put a harder thing in there. They don't want it to be easy. Sometimes on
Hmm.
PlayStation, people want it to be easy, but then I have fans on Steam who don't want them to be easy. They want them to like extend the life of the game,
Hmm.
so they can have more replayability on the game that they purchased. So,
Yeah.
uh, but just to go back to where I started with that, I feel like all the way in console design now, I feel like at least in the new Xbox and the new PlayStation, like that stuff is just subtle in there, and the way that they design their systems and the way to design their games, it's all like to get you to keep playing. Like
Hmm.
games are designed to get you to keep playing. The
Yep.
system itself wants you to keep playing. They
Yep.
they only make money when you're playing. They don't want you to
Yep.
turn it off. So,
Yep.
you know, just to tag on your point there, I do think it's somewhat of an issue.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I hadn't thought about that in terms of the achievement or trophy systems before because I'm such a casual gamer that I
Hmm.
never pursue those things. But
Yeah, yeah.
I personally love it when I do something unique or not on the main path of the game and I get an
Oh yeah.
achievement for it, because then it's kind of like the developers are like winking at you, it's like,
Yes,
oh,
yeah.
like you're leaning into the game and like we're going to reward you for that.
Yep, yep.
So I love that, but I
Mhm.
can definitely see how the achievement system is trying to drive more engagement, which could be problematic.
Yeah, because I mean, like, for instance, like I know this is how Xbox does it. It's like you get physical money for achievements. Like if you sign up for the Xbox rewards and it's available on the dashboard on
Mm,
the console, they give you like 50 points daily if you earn an achievement per day. So
mm,
that's like trying to drive one is trying to drive you to be liking to getting achievements, and it's trying to drive engagement on the console because however many points, I don't remember what the conversion is. I don't know if it's 5,000 or 25,000. I don't remember what it is. That's like $5 on the
mm-hmm,
Microsoft Store. So you can like convert those into
mm,
like new game purchases. And that's not the only reward that they do. They have like punch cards and stuff
mm,
where you sign up and it's like you play this many Game Pass games in a month and you do this many sign-ins on Game Pass, you get 1,000 points.
yeah,
And like and it all just adds up. There's like all these challenges that they do that they reward you with points that
mm-hmm,
reward you with real money.
mm-hmm,
But most of them are like trying to get you on games or get achievements in games.
yeah,
And PlayStation has done the same thing. They have given out real money for achievements in the past. They don't really do it now. They have digital collectibles they give you on the PlayStation Stars app, where like if you complete a certain challenge or if you get a certain number of achievements in a game or something like that, you get a little balloon that you could put on your display case. Basically,
mm-hmm,
it's not worth anything. They do give you money for some challenges, but it will be like playing PS Plus games, playing a multiplayer game, which requires you to buy PS Plus, which drives them income, so it's all, circular and that kind
yeah,
of thing.
yeah.
So,
Yeah, that's kind of a bummer. I love just the premium model of the games
games.
industry,
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
if I could just pay a flat fee and then engage with it as much or as little as I would like, that's the goal, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I totally agree. I prefer games that just have a premium price, and not every developer makes achievements in a bad way. I think the best example is Slay the Spire. Have you ever played that game?
No, but I'm familiar with it. It's on my list.
That's like one of my favorite games of all time. And in like including AAA. It's not like my favorite indie game. It's like in my top
Mhm.
10 favorite games. Like it's
Mhm.
so good.
Mhm.
And they have like the way that they do achievements is it like forces you to play their game that can be played a ton of different ways.
Oh,
It,
yeah.
it, it like because you could just play it one way and then just play it, and that's like you would never branch out.
Mhm.
But their achievements actually get you thinking like, oh, how would I even do that? And it like forces you to like think new ways about the game and then like learn different decks and different builds
Yeah.
and like forces you to try different things. So stuff like that. And they're also extremely challenging. So it's kind of like, really fun to go after them. Like if you're really, really good at the game, like even if you're really good, it's like it takes some luck to set it up, but it also takes a lot of skill to set them up. So stuff like
Mhm.
that is pretty fun. I feel like when I design my own achievements, like I try to make most of them like just achievable, like just by beating the game. So you're not
Mhm.
like like my biggest thing is like wasting players' time, whether it's like trying to addict you or like the game just has time mechanics where like you have to craft. It takes so long before you can get this thing, and like it's just kind of wasting time.
Yep.
I kind of hate that. So when I'm doing my games, I'll do basically just beating the game and then like a couple of miscellaneous, like, oh, if you really do this secret thing or you find this puzzle or whatever that you didn't have to do to beat the game, then you get a
Yeah.
a special reward basically. So
Yeah, definitely.
yeah.
Yeah, you know what I think they should do is just start, uh, charging per install of the game. I think that would be a really good way to monetize,
Yeah. On
I don't know. I don't know if
100%.
anybody's thought to do that,
You know
but
what? Especially if you delete it and then install it again, or if you put it on your multiple devices, we need to make sure we get
yeah,
all of our money that we can from that. Demos too, go ahead, pay for
yeah,
those.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that leads me into some of the questions. This is so I was going to ask you personally because we've had some of these discussions before in the past about tools, and I've been trying to convince Thomas to get Affinity Photo and don't pay Adobe because down with subscription services, boys. But so I was going to ask you, we're gonna talk about tools and we're gonna talk about engines. So as far as the engines go, are you going to stick with Unity or are you going to try something new? We're talking about instability. Unity, basically, for those who aren't familiar, they came up with a pricing model where basically they would charge you per install past a certain threshold. So if you made a certain amount of money lifetime, and if you made a certain amount of installs in a year, they would start charging you even if you weren't receiving any money. So if you deleted the game and then re-downloaded it and you had a bunch of customers do that, they would charge you per install. And they've since backtracked on that, but they basically blew their trust out of the water by doing that originally. And like a lot of people, I know a lot of people that both me and Thomas watch that are other game developer YouTubers, some of our, what you would say, colleagues, I guess. They have bounced off of Unity. They're already making Godot videos, pretty hardcore. I took a stance in my videos where I was going to keep using Unity for a time, but start learning new stuff just because I'm scared about Unity. But then immediately after taking that stance, all those other options looked really shaky themselves. So I'm like, what are your thoughts about this? What are your thoughts about all the game engine tools? Where are you going to go after this game?
Dude, it's been a whirlwind. It's
Tell me
it's
about
been
it.
entertaining at least, It's
Yeah. Gosh, dude.
at least it's not boring, right? That
I,
would be the worst thing, right?
yeah,
No.
boring.
No, but oh, I felt the same outrage that a lot of people had
Yeah.
about how crazy this pricing change was. And people were trying to jump ship to different engines and all of these
Hmm.
things, and I was like, Unity is kind of like the only thing that I know. So it's and like back to
Oh
that
yeah.
whole like I have a baby girl like that's due in like a month, and it's
Yeah.
like how am I going to be able to, I just it's swapping engines is a lot easier for a hobbyist.
Oh
But
yeah.
when you are reliant on it uh for an income, it
Hmm.
it changes the equation, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's been really interesting because even the most angry uh, individuals that I've seen, like on Twitter and YouTube,
Yeah.
that are outraged about these pricing changes, they've said like the only way that Unity could make this right is if they did blah 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 blah, like, and they just named some things, and I think Unity has actually done every
Those
single
things.
thing, every single one. I can't think of anything that they didn't address.
Hmm.
As far as like the terms of service and when these pricing changes would go into effect, or like
Yep.
being able to choose between a revenue share instead, or raising the thresholds, and just within the last 24 hours ousting the CEO.
Firing the
Like,
CEO. Yeah.
what the heck?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, dude. Yeah.
So I think that Unity lost a ton of trust in their community. But
Hmm.
after that, I don't know what more they could do to earn the trust of their community.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I was thinking about this topic because it's interesting for me and you to talk about it because you kind of said it. You said hobbyist, and like a lot of the people who've switched are not, they're game developers, but their income is not from game development, it's from
Yeah.
YouTube.
Yeah,
They're
exactly. They're content
YouTubers.
creators.
They're
Yeah.
content creators.
Yeah.
They're either like creating tutorials or fun content or silly content, and they're making the bulk of their money. Sure, they might want to release a game or they have released commercial games, but the bulk of their income is not coming from those games is coming from YouTube. And for me and you, I mean, I know you're monetized, and for me, I'm like literally just on the ladder. I'm like right there before before being monetized on YouTube.
Mhm.
Just need a couple more hours, and
Mhm.
then I'm like there. They've already changed the thing. Like, oh, check your eligibility. Like I'm
Yep.
getting close.
Yep.
But either way, it's like it's not that much income for you, or will be for me. Our
Yep.
our income is coming from the games, and I just watched some of the outrage, and I'm like, I felt the outrage. I made a video and I was like kind of joking all about it, about like, dude, this is just crazy. That's like, that was the only thing I could say, is like, this is crazy, you know?
Yep.
But I'm like, it's so much harder than these people on Twitter, like the outrage mob thinks. Just like, oh, switch engines, or all the comments were like, switch engines. Like I spent like a day messing with Unreal, and I'm like, this sucks.
Yep.
And then I spent a day, like I haven't talked about this. I was going to do this on another video, but we can talk about it now. I downloaded and created a CryEngine account because
Oh,
okay, I was like, let me go and be original. All these people are talking about Unreal. I was like, I'll bring a
yeah.
video to the people of some a more obscure engine, but that could also be done professionally on PlayStation, Xbox, and Switch.
Mhm.
And I put one of the mazes I was working on, like my test. If you guys, I know Thomas has followed my live streams. I haven't done them in a little while, keeping things under wraps. You guys will see them again soon after the TreeFall Studios developer conference. But so I've been working on this maze game live on my streams, and I basically tested by just bringing over the assets I created, and I just started dragging them into Unreal and trying to change the lighting and the material properties and the colliders, just to see what they would look like and how easy it was to pull it in. And then I tried the same thing for the CryEngine, and dude, I'm telling you what, Unity is just easy. It just like, I was thinking about this. It's like, it just works. I talked about it in my video that I want to make my own game engine, and I would like to hire engineers in the future. If we make a lot more money, and like build like a Treefall Studios engine. And I really feel like, and I guess people are learning this with Godot as like they're requesting features. I feel like Unity is intuitive, and like it when I think this is how something should be done, it works that way for the most part. There's plenty of things you have to learn in Unity, but like you can just drag in an FBX, and then all of the settings are in the inspector, and then
Mhm.
you can set it. That's not how it is in the CryEngine or Unreal. It just comes in, it just you import it. It's like messed up in a bunch of folders. You have to like double click the asset to like change its settings. It will open it up in another window where you're looking at the mesh editor window, and then you see all these things. You got to save it and close it in this to have it pop up here. And sure, you can pull out those windows and drag them all over and put them wherever you want in multiple windows in Unity, but everything just works in Unity. And like just like you were saying, like it's what I know, and like I'm required to launch some games, and I've already got games in the works in it. And one more point is, I don't know if you've seen this because you are in the PlayStation and the Xbox portals now, but it's basically really, really hard to work with even the Unreal Engine in PlayStation or something like that. And people will say, there's plenty of games released in the Unreal Engine for PlayStation, but those games are AAA games. For indie
Mhm.
developers, like there's not that much support. All the support is based on Unity. All the, you know, major support from like Sony's employees are helping you make your games come over in Unity, stuff like that. And if you want to request support in Unreal or the CryEngine, which I checked, you can do all that, but it's not as supported, and it's much harder to figure out on
Mhm.
your own as a self-publisher like both of us are doing
Mhm.
than if you had a giant publisher who was like, oh sure, we'll take the Unreal Engine and we know how to do it.
Mhm.
So that's just something to think about. I just think it's a little too hard to jump ship this quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a really good point. I hadn't thought about checking documentation for other engines on those different platforms, but
Hmm.
yeah, that's a I the main appeal to me would be, I mean, if I was financially stable and I had like R&D time, I would
Yeah,
love to be able to mess around with Unreal just because it's just their lighting. Their lighting is
it's
like the
it looks
that's like
real.
the main thing. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
And it just looks so good.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like you can with Unity, like my artistic style is usually more stylized anyway, so it
Hmm.
works well with Unity. But I would still love to. I mean, if Unity had like a killer lighting engine, I couldn't see myself ever leaving it unless they did something stupid with their
Yeah.
pricing again. But
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
but I mean,
Yeah.
engine wise, that's the only thing that I wish the engine had. That's the only
Hmm.
reason that I would want to go over to Unreal. I think.
The just to piggyback on that, I would say like Unity HDRP is getting better. Like, but my problem with Unity is like I don't like the split pipelines. It
Yeah.
makes it too complicated. Some things work in some things don't work in
Yeah.
others. You know, coding changes depending on what you're using. And the real problem with it, and this is like this is one of the thing, this is a problem with Unity, but this is really a problem with Unreal. And one of the things why I actually like Unity is that like HDRP is heavy, it's bloated, and like I ran a project using HDRP on the PlayStation 4 dev kit, and like I basically had nothing. Like if you guys go back to my streams and look at the pick a block project I had, it's got like 25 cubes, you know. It's got like a table mesh, which is maybe 50 polygons, probably less. Square walls, you know, lighting coming through a window, and like two side tables in the back, and that's it. I'm talking, you know, maybe a few thousand polygons for the whole scene. Relatively small texture sizes. I'm still like 1024, so like the 1K textures or whatever. Some maybe 2048. So not too high on my texture sizes, and cut back lighting settings, and I still couldn't get it past like 30, 40 FPS. And there's like
Dang.
almost no code running at
Mm,
all. So like the PlayStation 4 is a platform that I'm going to continue supporting for at least, I would assume, 2 to 3 more years, um, at the bare minimum, because like I'm basically going to support PlayStation 4 until they say you can't, you know.
mhm.
Like why wouldn't you? Like my games are not intensive to where like they have the graphically intensive to where like they have to be on PS5 only and above. Like I'm designing for lower end hardware. Like how are you supposed to, the PlayStation 4 blows the Switch out the water, you know, in terms of power and stuff. And you know, if I'm designing my base SKU around the PS4, and then I would like downgrade to get to the Switch or upgrade to get to like PS5 or whatever. But if I'm like trying to still hit those low end targets, how are you going to run HDRP anyways? How are you going to run Unreal anyways? Like
Mhm.
it doesn't make any sense. Like we're going to talk about this in the next couple of points. We're going to talk about like where we think, like who's going to survive in the industry, switch to consolidation of the Xbox, owning everything, turning it into a service instead of an actual platform. Where are we going to put our games? We're going to talk about that in just a second. So I'm thinking like in the future, like where do I want to put my games? Well, who sells the most systems? It's
Mhm.
Nintendo, and then it's PlayStation, and then it's Xbox, and then Steam is like a different beast, and then mobile is a different beast. So
Mhm.
like if the lower end hardware is what sells more, what's the point of Unreal? And then there's one more point for Unreal for me. It's like I like a lot of things that Unreal has that I wish Unity could have, but also they don't really have like good 2D tools. And
Mhm.
like if you look at my games, like I do a lot of 3D stuff, but I also like alternate. I'll do a 2D game, a 3D game, a 2D
Yep.
game, and my 2D art's not even that good, but I'll do like simple 2D art sometimes, or
Mhm.
pixel art, or you know, like my Mighty Math game was a pretty good example where it's like all abstract art, you know, just numbers and stuff going across the screen. But to get that running in Unreal, it would have just been, you know, completely different.
Yep.
So just I don't know. For me, like I don't see myself switching. I was considering learning the extra tools, but then I'm like, Epic Games is having profitability troubles. They had to fire 1,000 people. I'm
Mhm.
like, if they, like it's gonna cost more money for me to learn it. It's gonna cost time, money. It's gonna make development harder. It's gonna make getting to the consoles I want harder, PlayStation or Switch. and then it's not even safely guaranteed that they won't have to change their prices, because they're
Mhm.
losing money. So
Mhm.
I don't know. There's people on Twitter that are basically the moral argument of like, oh, you can't, we won't buy your Unity games because you're supporting an evil, greedy corporation. But
Mhm.
like, they're basically all the same. It's like
Yeah.
they forgot all about that instantly to get mad at all the people that they laid off at Epic Games, when it's just the
Yeah.
reality of the industry. So
Yeah. There's no perfect choice for sure.
yeah, yeah, perfect way to put that.
Yeah. It's pick your poison, as they say.
Yeah, so I think we're both in agreement. We're gonna both kind of be sticking with Unity for the foreseeable future. Although when I started throwing out some feelers about the TreeFall Studios game engine, I started getting some messages. People were like, "Are you serious?" Some people were interested in like working for me to start putting the engine together. Some of our developer friends were like, "Oh yeah, I'd like to check that out." And
Yeah.
I'm like, "Here we go, let's go." Well, I'm gonna make a proprietary engine that's just
Yeah.
unbelievable, and then I'm only gonna give it to my friends.
Well, well,
So,
couldn't you fork Godot since it's open source and then
you could,
convert it into your own proprietary engine?
and just
Like
just
it'd be a
boom.
great base, yeah.
Yeah,
And then you
it,
can
it
just
it is.
further develop it. Yeah.
Yeah, because I'm like, I think that this is kind of like a little bit off the topic, but I guess it is instability. I would say that the engines are consolidating, that AAA studios are using. And if you can name some of the famous ones, like there's the RE engine that Capcom has, or there's the Decima engine, which is I think is Kojima's.
Mhm.
Now there's the Frostbite engine, which is EA's. They make Battlefield and um, some of their games in that. And there was some more that they used to be like thrown around. People will talk about the Creation Engine with Starfield and Skyrim and stuff. But like now, I feel like more and more developers are starting to slim down their proprietary tools and
Mhm.
just either choose Unity or Unreal because
Yep.
those engines are just so supported and like they're just developing so fast and it's just
Mhm.
cheaper for other studios. But that kind of scares me because I'm like, okay, so you're losing all these engines that all these studios worked on for years, and then
Mhm.
they're all going to these engines that are like completely unstable. And then
Yep.
like what happens when everything is just like the same? It's all kind of made in the same type of tools. I'm kind of like, oh, I think it would be cool one day to have my own. I joked about it being the Oak engine,
Mhm.
but I'm like, eventually something like that would be pretty dope. I think by the
Mhm.
time we got 500 employees and whatnot. So
Yeah, definitely.
that's crazy, man. So I guess we can go on. We talked about a lot of the stuff right there that I had on my notes, but let's go on the tools. So what kind of tools do you use? Are you, because I think this is like something that our audience might not fully understand when you say development cost. It's the cost of tools, it's the cost of engines, it's the cost of dev kits, but
Mhm.
development cost is also your cost of living. If
Mhm.
take 6 months to develop a game, well, what it takes to live in your area for 6 months is the amount of money you've invested in the game, plus the amount of the tools and what it took to make it, and equipment, computers, and
Yep.
then taxes and stuff after the fact, once you've made the money. So I don't think that, everybody who watches our channels, they might not be as familiar with all of the things that come into development costs. So could you
Mhm.
name off a couple of the things that, you're paying for, or like what are your biggest development costs? Is it just the expenses, or are there tools that you can't give up like Unity that now
Yeah.
have big fees or seat fees or
Yep.
anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, uh, I try and keep overhead as low as I can.
Yeah.
I'm trying to bootstrap stuff as much as I can. But that being said,
Hmm.
there are some tools that I pay for almost exclusively software licenses.
Yeah.
Um, let's see, I bought some Xbox controllers.
Okay. Yeah. That's an expense.
Yeah, because I was making a multiplayer game, so I
You
needed to
gotta.
have. Yep. Luckily, I had I do all my development on a MacBook Pro,
Mm-hmm.
and I had bought that initially because when I got hired on at that game studio, I was initially contracted. I was a contractor, and so I had to provide my own hardware. So I bought this laptop then, and it's been doing its job throughout the years. And there's stuff
Yeah.
like content creator stuff, like this for my webcam. I'm using my GoPro, and that's
Oh,
like a
nice.
camera that I'll film with. And I had to
Yeah.
buy a mic. This thing I think was like $80 or something when I bought it. So there's that kind of stuff, but mostly like Unity is one, but that's free up until you make bank.
Yeah.
And then the main one I think is my IDE, which I use to code in, and I use JetBrains Writer.
You do?
Yeah,
Oh,
and
wow.
I love it.
Do you really? See,
Yeah.
okay, this brings me on like four discussions, so I'll just keep it brief. But
Mhm.
like, I'm with you. Like, I develop on Windows, and I know you had to buy a Windows machine because you can't always develop for different platforms in Mac.
Yep.
Okay, so I would kind of like to get rid. I like hate Microsoft now, so
Mhm.
so I'm like, I kind of want like a Mac, but then I'm like, okay, I have to develop some things in Windows anyways. But then I was like, okay, well, how can I get rid of more Microsoft tools? And I started looking into JetBrains because I'm like,
Mhm.
oh, I noticed when I was my puppy's running around. I noticed when I was looking at Unreal and I was looking at Unity, there is a JetBrains writer. The IDE works in both. So
Mhm.
like you could code in multiple. So I was like, okay, this is an independent company. I can get away from Microsoft or Apple and whatever computer I wanted to work on. I could do this. And then I went just the other day, dude. I went to their website and looked it up. I was like, can I just download this? It was like free trial. And I was like, I looked at the pricing. How much is it? It was like a couple $100
Yeah,
or more.
I got mine on a deal. I think it's a little over $100 for a year.
Yeah, I was like,
And
oh gosh.
yeah, but here's the thing is you buy that and then you have a perpetual fallback license. So
What does that mean?
if you don't upgrade, you don't have to renew your subscription and you can just stay on the current version that you have.
Oh, so you're saying like you could basically pay like it's like $120. You could just pay it once.
Yep.
Okay, well then that's
Yeah.
that's worth it, I think.
And it's I mean, before that I was using VS Code, which is lightweight, which
Mm-hmm.
is like it's probably what I would recommend as an alternative, but the IntelliSense never like the autocomplete features for uh the Unity specific code never really worked perfectly for me,
Yeah.
but I love Writer. It's so nice. And I've been working in it full time for 3 years, so
Oh wow.
it's just what I know, and I know all the
Yeah.
hotkeys, I know how to jump around the code and rename functions quickly and like all this stuff.
Wow, that's really cool. I thought about it. It looked cool, so I thought about trying it. Then I saw cost involved, and I was like,
Yeah.
just move on. I don't even have the VS Code. I saw that just recently. People were recommending that because it was lightweight. Like I just have the full
Yeah.
Visual Studio,
Yeah.
and I
I
was
hate
like,
that.
oh my gosh, this could be
Yeah.
even better. Because like when I first transitioned to Visual Studio, like I did not like it. I liked Unity's I've been
Oh,
working
yeah.
I've been
The
working in
the
Unity.
mono editor or whatever.
Yeah,
Yeah.
mono develop.
Yeah.
I've been working in Unity so long that I shipped my first couple commercial games in mono develop. I was like, there was
Mhm.
no tools. It's just you just typed it in, and I don't use
Mhm.
any of the Visual Studio tools. I don't know anything about programming. I'm a big dummy. I just I just type what I know, and then if it doesn't work, I figure out how to make it work, and that's it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't use any of the I don't use any auto completes really. I mean, I guess like it
Mhm.
does like sometimes like when I'm typing something, it will kind of know what I'm wanting next.
Yeah.
Sometimes it gets it right, but then a lot of
Yeah.
times like it doesn't, and I'm like I just type it in anyways.
Yeah.
So I'm like I don't pay anything for the coding editor, so that's interesting. Do you pay anything for like YouTube stuff?
Um, I mean, there's like Photoshop and Premiere Pro, the
Okay.
Adobe suite.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um.
I mean, like, did you? Because I pay for like content, like for the music and
Oh yes, that's a good point too. I do use a Epidemic Sound,
okay,
but it's like on a on again off again because I'll wait until they have like a deal and then I'll get
yeah,
like
yeah,
a 3 month thing or whatever.
mm-hmm.
Because I'm kind of on the fence about it because I'm like, is it really worth like?
I
Yeah,
don't
I think they
think
just bumped their prices too.
they
Yeah, and
do.
I'm yeah.
I use story blocks.
Oh yeah.
I don't know if you've seen that because I use
Mm-hmm.
that like it's very expensive for what it is, but like I use it for the music and like and the stock footage for
Mm-hmm.
like my produced videos. So like the 1,000 sales on Steam where I'm like showing footage of like people working and my year of focus where I'm showing people walk around and all that stuff. I get
Mm-hmm.
all my footage, like all I paid for all of that footage and the music
Mm-hmm.
in those videos. In all my other videos, I just use the music I write for my games,
Mm-hmm.
like in my devlogs or whatever, in some of my videos. So I don't know if it's worth it. I'm like my year. I did a yearly subscription thing, and I'm like it's big expense. It's like $360 for the year. And
Mm-hmm.
I was thinking like this was the year that I would take YouTube to the next level. And like I do feel like that it's helped out. Like because those videos that I use extra footage or whatever, like those are some of my most liked videos, but none of them have really blown up enough to
Yeah.
where like it's brought in money to cover that cost.
Yeah.
Like, I'm sinking money in.
Yeah.
And I think like the next best thing for me would just to be upgrading my microphone, upgrading, some more lights, stuff
Mm-hmm.
for the studio and all that
Mm-hmm.
kind of stuff. So I think I'm probably gonna diss that this year. So
Mm-hmm.
um,
Yeah, it's hard, man. That's if you figure out how to blow up on YouTube, then give me a call.
you're already ahead of me. So I mean,
Yeah.
it's just crazy. So it's a lot of
Yeah.
things like that people don't really think about because it's like there's a lot of cost in development, even for little guys like us. We're not even talking about some of the costs that these AAA developers are, going through right now. But like for us, like we have to market, and if we don't market ourselves, then like we're not going to sell any copies. So in order to
Yep.
be better at marketing, to be better at YouTube, to be better at this, like it does cost money. You do have to
Yep.
spend on things outside of development costs. So
Yep. I also pay for a web server and domain name
yep,
and a VPN so that I can access some of the different platform dashboards.
yep.
Yeah, there's like a bunch of small stuff.
It adds up.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it really adds up because like I do the same thing. Like, you have to have a website, you have to have a professional email, to
Yep.
work with Sony and stuff like that. So, that stuff is I'm like on a grandfathered in plan because I've had it for so long. But even that plan, they raised prices
Mm,
on, like last year for me. So I'm
mm-hmm.
like almost every single thing I had raised prices. There was some other things like I had paid for like cloud storage and some other things to like save, but I just deleted them, like just got rid of the
Yep.
subscriptions because I'm like, it's not really worth it.
Yep.
Just trying
Oh
to
yeah.
save money while sales are,
I bought
going
a
up.
couple of these, which
Yep.
are really great for video editing. They're like that's at 1 terabyte, and they're fast enough that you can just store everything on there and
Yep.
just stream it to your computer while you're editing.
Yeah.
Yeah, stuff like that.
Yeah, it's crazy. People are just don't think about all the stuff. And we're only really talking about the tools and costs because, it kind of leads into this discussion of like, why are you guys seeing all of these studios close? Why does things seem unstable in the industry? And this is from our perspective of like there's nickel and dime cost over and over, and this isn't even touching dev kits are expensive, and the PS5 is a different one than the PS4, so you got to
Yep.
buy a new one, and you
Yep.
got to buy a new Xbox kit, and you got to get your Switch kit, and then you got to learn, you got to take time, which costs money, to learn how to use it and import yourself and all this kind of stuff. So it's easy to see like there's a lot of game developers, me and Thomas have discussed before, there's a lot of people who will post journeys like this, kind of like where Thomas is at in his journey, where they've started up a new game. They might even seem successful. You guys might even like some of their games, but after a game, they close down.
Hmm.
And it's just because, one, it costs a lot of money to run a studio, and we're not even touching the taxes topic of what it costs to continue a corporation or anything like that, or an accountant that you might have to pay, because at this point you basically have to pay an accountant to take care of your business. And then when the economy itself is raising inflation, and like cost of living are going up all across the country and all across the world, well, that's part of development cost. So like it increases.
Yep.
If it's going to take you a year to make a game, and the game still sells as much as your last game that came out 3 years ago, it sells the same exact amount, well, and it's the same price, that's not enough, if the cost of living has gone up 3 times in the last
Hmm.
3 years. So it's just very interesting. What are your plans to mitigate some of these factors? Or do you have anything? Are you trying to cut costs? Are you mentioned you're keeping overhead low.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. I'm trying not to, you know, another one is like health insurance.
mm,
That's like a big one. uh,
mm,
and yeah, so yeah,
yeah,
there's a bunch of stuff.
that is a
I've
huge one.
Yeah, I'm not someone who buys things on a whim. Like I will
Mm,
only buy things if I absolutely need it. And so it's like, oh, my computer is running out of storage. I absolutely need an external hard drive. So then
yeah,
I'll
yeah.
do a bunch of research and try and figure out what's on sale, what works the best. That's just kind of my style. Like I needed a Windows machine so that I could port to certain consoles, and
Hmm.
um I just decided to buy like one of the cheaper laptops that I could find, and just not do any of the development on it, but just use it as a build machine. So
Yeah.
I don't know, stuff like that. I'm still learning as I go. I'm just paying for the things that I absolutely need. So I don't know. I don't know if there's a trick to it.
I feel like you've learned that faster than me, because that's how I'm looking at it now. But I feel like in the last like 2 years, like my business started growing, we started selling more games than we had ever sold, and I was thinking, "Oh, this is great. These are a bunch of things that I could invest business money into in
Hmm.
order to make my business this year even bigger." And some of those
Hmm.
things were like story blocks and
Yep.
the cloud storage. I was like, this will make this faster, or
Yeah.
all these different things where I did some advertising where I like paid for some, social media ads. I'm like, well, we have a
Yep.
little bit of money, and I'm like, these will all make the business better and we'll make
Yep.
more money off of it. And I lost money on every single thing. So
Yeah.
it's
Well,
it's an
it's so
absolute
interesting.
waste. Yeah.
Like you're exchanging money for time, right? And it's
Yeah.
like when I was at my full-time job, I had a bunch of money, but I had no time. So then I
Yeah.
decided to go all in, and now I have a ton of time and no money.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
like I'm trying to figure out how do I optimize this?
Yeah. It needs
Yeah.
to be somewhere in the middle. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's pretty crazy. I don't know. As far as tools and stuff for me, I can just mention it real quick before we move on. Like I don't really pay for anything now outside of like obviously the fees that you pay for the dev kits, but like I'm using like free open source software for most everything. Like I use
Yep.
Blender, for my
Yep.
models.
Same.
I use Affinity Photo Suite, which is like my Photoshop replacement and stuff, which was like a
Hmm.
one-time license fee. I think
Hmm.
I've given them like $150 for like all of the different softwares that I've used for like multiple generations or whatever.
Hmm.
So highly inexpensive, pretty good stuff. I really like it. And then I'm using DaVinci Resolve. I'm using free video editing software. I'm using, most everything is free. I'm using the free version, obviously, of Visual Studio.
Yep.
Um,
OBS, Audacity.
yeah, yeah. So I don't. Well, I guess I do. For music, I did pay for my music creation software. I don't actually use
Hmm.
Audacity. So,
Oh, nice.
but that's because I like actually write music and
Yeah.
stuff for my games. But then
Yeah.
like that software that I use to write the music also has like recording.
Oh, nice.
capabilities or whatever. So like if I needed to record audio for like a sound effect or something, it would just be
Hmm.
better in my studio software instead of Audacity or whatever.
Yeah.
But I know a lot of people like, Jonas, the tie roller.
Hmm.
I watched his video, like he made like all of his sound effects in Audacity, just
Oh, yeah.
recording them and just
Hmm.
making sounds and stuff for his game. So I'm like, you can release professional games using all free stuff basically, but I choose not to for
Yeah.
that one at least. It was like $100. My studio was like
Yeah.
$100 like 10 years ago, and I'm
Yeah.
using the old one still. Like I just haven't upgraded or whatever. So
Hmm.
relatively inexpensive. So for all of
Nice.
our game developers out there who are interested in starting a studio cheap, we're both doing that. So
Hmm.
all right, so let's just move into our last little question because we've kind of gone on a little long here, but I've been having a great time just chatting.
Absolutely.
It's been a lot of fun, and we don't really know how the format of these episodes are going to go in the future. This is the first one. We're kind of just testing the waters here. If you guys are getting some enjoyment out of this content, be sure to leave a comment down below. Especially if you made it this far into the video, you watched with us pretty far. Let
Hmm.
me know what you're thinking about the show, what you would like to see, guests you would like to have on, more topics you'd like to talk about, you have us talk about, all that kind of stuff. Leave it down below. So now we'll just like we'll talk about a little bit of the last question I have written down, and that's just like what are our predictions? We've kind of already touched on this. What do you think the console market is going to do? Do you think Nintendo is going to hit it big with their next Switch, or are they going to flop again like the Wii U?
Hmm.
The CEO of Sony is leaving. PS5 kind of got off to a little bit of a slow start. It's now like pacing with the PS4. So now it's selling pretty well, but in my opinion, I don't really understand why it's selling so well. I think it's just because it's the only high-end console that really, actually has some games to it because they haven't really released too many games like all the Sony studios. They're going through layoffs too, and they haven't announced anything new for first-party games. I'm confused on why it's selling as well as it is. It's very expensive. It looks like they're going through some shakeups. They're kind of reassessing. There was a lot of games that they canceled behind the scenes that we never even saw. We just knew that they were confirmed. They canceled like 2 or 3 live service games before we even saw them. So they're going through some internal shakeups. What are your thoughts on that? And then Xbox, all the stuff with Xbox has leaked recently that, during this acquisition, well, one, that they want to acquire the entire world. They've already acquired many studios in the past, and Activision Blizzard is like the biggest one. To me, that's like dangerous monopoly territory already. And then they're not going to stop after that. They'll buy more because they'll still need to compete. We've also seen some of their next gen plans leaked where they plan on next year refreshing an all digital Xbox and not having physical media, pulling out of physical stores. And their next generation system is basically not going to be a console. It's going to be a cloud hybrid that you're going to need the internet to play, which to me doesn't bode well for game preservation and it's not good for the players, for one. So all of that stuff is instability to me. I don't
Yep.
think companies are making the best choices for the consumers. What are your thoughts on some of those things? Where do you think the industry is going, and where are you going to place your bets when you're focusing your development time? That'll be our last
Yeah.
topic.
Man, that's a good question. I feel like you're not going to like my answer.
I'm not.
Yeah.
Well, hey, that's the point of
I-
discussion.
yeah.
Yeah.
I think that long term we are maybe not next generation of consoles, but probably after that. I think that we're going to see an era of game development and um, game consumption that is completely hardware agnostic. I think we're going to move into
Mm,
a console free era of all games are streamed and all you need is a controller and you hook it up to your either your TV or your XR headset and you just stream all of the games to you and companies like PlayStation and Xbox are going to be housing warehouses of dedicated machines that run the games there is my guess.
Interesting. Oh,
Agree or disagree? I know.
I I 100% disagree.
Oh, really? That's
Yeah.
great.
Yeah,
That's not
no.
what I want to happen, but
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
that's probably where we're going.
No, yeah, I honestly think, well, I mean, I agree with you, that's where they're trying to go. Or at least some of the companies. I don't think Nintendo is really trying that yet. But I think that's what Xbox, obviously, that's what Xbox wants to do. And, eventually PlayStation could follow suit. I personally think that it's going to crash and burn. I think that they're going to lose big money. That's where I would place the bets. There are a lot of people who have already adopted the all digital lifestyle, but there is a difference between all digital downloads and streaming through the internet. That's where they would like to go so that they can always get money from you and that they can control the content that you see, and they want to manipulate what you can and can't play. That's very evident in all the Microsoft docs and how they're going about Game Pass and streaming, cloud streaming, all that kind of stuff. I just don't think that I think the consumers are starting to switch around. I think that people started going the all digital route because they're like, hey, this is super convenient. It's easy, it's fast, and it's cheap, because like a lot of the times they put stuff on sale super cheap on these sales. Actually, guys, by the way, by the time this video is live, there will be a lot of TreeFall Studios titles featured in the next PlayStation sale. So guys, stop what you're doing right now and go buy some of our games on sale. Cheap digital games. Anyways,
No.
so yeah, I was thinking that like a lot of people were really enjoying it because you would see like AAA games, they would be coming out like way cheaper on, like the, let's say, the Halloween sale or the Black Friday sale. They would be way cheaper just to buy the digital game, on the store, and you would have it done right then and there, and people got
Mhm.
used to it. But people didn't really, they're starting to not like the idea of like, oh, this is the only way we're going to be able to get this. Because if you actually destroy physical media, well, one, you put people's jobs at risk. I mean, like GameStop doesn't even have a right to exist anymore. Obviously, Walmart and Target and those types of places, they'll just stop selling games, but they
Mhm.
sell plenty of other stuff. But somewhere like GameStop, that's like trying to attack the middleman completely. And a lot of people hate GameStop, but I actually kind of like GameStop, going in there and talking to humans who also
Mhm.
like video games and purchasing, used games. I do that all the time. I think that people are going to revolt against that idea where they are locked into choice, and I think a lot of people are starting to realize the how monopolies work, and like if Microsoft is the only place that you can get these games and it's only available digitally, what is the incentive to put it on sale? There is no
Mhm.
incentive. If you're releasing the big game that everyone wants, it's like Nintendo.
Yeah, that's what Nintendo does.
They never put
Yep.
their games on sale.
Yep.
Um, it's because the demand goes down and there's a bunch of copies sitting on retail shelves, and GameStop drops the price down to $20 for last year's Call of Duty or whatever.
Mhm.
But you don't have to do that if you're only digital. So I think people are going to revolt against that a little bit. And then the cloud streaming stuff, like the new Xbox is not going to work without the internet.
Mhm.
And so if I check my watch, we're in 2023. We're in the end of 2023. So 2024 is getting ready to start. Their timeline is supposed to be 4 years away that we're going to all have to be required on the internet. I'm like, I'm sorry, dude. Like, a lot of people have the internet in the United States, but there's a lot of people who like video games that they don't even have internet. And I
Yeah.
know that blows some people's mind. I mean, like they're obviously not watching this video, but I know that there's some places and people that will go to a GameStop and buy a cheap game or whatever, or play old Nintendo systems, and they don't have internet right now, whether it's not available in their area, or they needed to cut back on expenses and they didn't pay for it this month. It wasn't required. They work a job somewhere and they don't need the internet.
Mhm.
And then internet connections just aren't that good. Like there's
Yep.
plenty of places where it's like it's not good enough for actual streaming. Like even people like for me, I'm like, well, I've got pretty good internet, but like streaming is still like lag dependent. You know, it's
Yep.
like it's not great. It's not the best way to play. You know what I mean?
Yep. Definitely. I completely agree with you. But I also think that in order for the consumers to revolt against this kind of transition, people are going to have to be principled enough to make the less convenient decision. And I
Yep.
think that that's the minority of people.
No, I agree with you 100%. I feel like that minority is growing.
Yeah.
Especially also another point to go on there is the you don't actually own anything, and this is
Yep.
like my biggest thing because like I sold a bunch of games this week. You know, I sell them all the time. I have a giant shelf, so like when I'm done with them, I sell them, or when they grow in value because they're rare now and you can only play them on the Wii or whatever, you can sell it for more money. You know, all that kind of
Mhm.
stuff. You're not actually owning anything. If you're just buying these $60 digital games over and over and over, you're paying a ton of money over and over and over for like a few hours of entertainment, and then you can't get any money out of it. I think
Mhm.
people are also going to start seeing that a little bit more. I think the minority is growing of people who would do that, but I think for Xbox, I think like Sony has the ability to put them into the grave like early, because like you're saying people have to make the inconvenient choice to not do that. But let's say Xbox does it and say, okay, you've got to do this. You've got to have the internet. You can't buy games physically anymore. You've got to get them from us. And PlayStation goes just one more generation where they don't do that.
Mhm.
And you can buy discs and you can play the big sweet PlayStation games and you can play everything that's available on the Xbox on there. Well, no one would buy the Xbox and no one would pay for their service. Like the people even who were more Xbox fans, there's plenty of people that would switch over to go, okay, at least with this, you know, I have the option. Now
Mhm.
the difference is like if they Sony sees that and they decide, hey, we're doing it too, then you don't really have that much of a revolt choice. You either play their games or you just say I got to be principled. I'm not going to buy these until they, you know, change their mind and re-release a physical console, or
Yep.
I'll just play Nintendo games because I'm assuming Nintendo is going to come out with, you know, at least one more generation of physical games and stuff like that. So,
Yep.
but I just think it's interesting. I don't know if I sent you the sales data like a couple weeks ago, but like, you know, Xbox Series is, you know, like 140,000 units behind the Xbox One. And at this point, they're at like 21 million units sold. And you got to think like, is that shipped through or is that the ones that are sitting in the stores right now that
Mhm.
haven't sold? Like I walked into my GameStop yesterday, there's 4 Xboxes used sitting there. How many are sitting in people's houses untouched, you
Yep.
know? So I'm like their install base is like pretty negligible. You know, like it's almost as low. I mean, like Nintendo hit like 13 million Wii U's, and that was their worst generation ever. I mean, they have like
Yep.
over 130 million Switches, and they said like I forgot what their numbers were. Like their active numbers were like 90% or like, you know, 100 million of them were at least turned on like more than once in the last year, you know,
Mhm.
frequently used, whatever their tracking
Yep.
was. So I'm like, it's just crazy. I just feel like they're kind of like on the verge of just they could just no longer exist, in my opinion. I
Yeah.
know that they're like, and they're instead of making new games and new hardware and trying to get people into their ecosystem, they're just spreading their ecosystem to every device possible and just spending money on things that generate money. Like they're like,
Yep.
oh, Call of Duty makes money, let's just buy that.
Yep.
You know?
Yep. Yep. I completely agree. I don't know. Yeah. The the interesting thing though too is that I'm not convinced that physical products are uh, a benefit for indie developers though, because
Hmm.
digital games are the only way that people like you and I can try making a living off of games, because the trying to figure out the uh, shipping retail products and
Mm-hmm.
getting people to stock the shelves with a physical good, it's, you know, and it raises overhead tremendously having to pay for those materials. And you know, I think that it's that's something that is only available to a company that already has, or is at least assured that it's going to be a financial success.
Yeah. Well, I mean, at this point, it's like, okay, just because you have physical, the digital's never going away. It's not
Mhm.
like they're going to take away our ability to release a digital small game on their platform
Yeah.
or whatever. But with that point, this is another question for you. Would you ever see yourself releasing a physical game? There's plenty of indie developers who do make good money on it. Like, there's
Mhm.
super rare games, limited run games. There's a
Yep.
bunch of different people who will like take even obscure indie games like mine or yours and give you like a limited physical print,
Yep.
and that kind of thing. Is that something that you could ever see yourself doing? Is that a dream?
100%. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I don't even care if it's, even if it was just to break even, like financially,
Yeah, yeah.
like that'd be so cool. Yeah.
Yeah, just to see it in GameStop.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
you go to the store to buy that one, would you?
Yeah. I'd buy them out.
Yeah. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. You're like, look at it. And then you call up the
Yeah.
company who published it. Look how much money we're making.
Yeah,
They're
exactly.
sold out everywhere. You should
Yeah.
order some more.
Just in this one town though.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
I'll buy them out over here in my town.
Yeah.
So
No.
we'll start to spreading it out all over the world.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. I can't tell you where I think the industry's going. I think it's interesting. Like I think that they're pushing towards the all digital stuff and the internet stuff. I don't think that streaming, per se, like helps us any, because like if
Yeah,
they
I
if
agree.
if they start taking ability away from downloading and like they allow you to make indie games on their streaming platform, well, who's to say that they're not more selective? Because
Yep.
like the bandwidth is all being shared in these processing centers,
Yep.
and like if your game has barely any plays and barely any downloads, why would they let you be on their service? They're going to
Yep.
choose Hollow Knight over me. They're
Yep.
going to choose whatever over me. So, Slay the Spire or something like that. So I don't think that helps indie developers, and I don't think it would be fun. Like I said, the latency and stuff like that. I think, especially for very precision-based games, it would basically destroy. To me, I'm like, it destroys the platform, like the platforming genre, which is like half of indie developers are making, precision-based platformers.
Yeah,
I'm
right.
like, just different things like that. So I think it's dangerous for developers, and to me, I'm like, okay, in my head, what can people like us do to make sure that kind of stuff doesn't happen? It's like, well, like if that's all they're offering, well, I'm like not going to put my game on their system. I'm going to put it on a system that offers like a distribution channel that I support or agree with.
Yeah.
But at a certain point, like if everyone did that, and you didn't have any other options, I mean, you could be vocal about it and try your best, but it's not like you have too much pull as a small company.
Yep.
But yeah, so that's kind of my thoughts on that. I think it's kind of dangerous where everything's going. It's all focused on money. It's focused on control, stuff like that.
Yep.
But I do think consumers and developers like us putting your money where your mouth is basically can help change for good. I think there's a lot of people out there that do worry about where things are going and stuff like that. So,
Yep. Definitely.
well, all right, man. You got any last thoughts on any of these discussion topics?
Oh
Anything we
man.
talked about today before we get on out of here? Anything you'd like to say? You can give any of your last thoughts if you want me to comment on anything you've got. And then after that, you can go ahead and give your outro and tell
Yeah.
everyone where they can find you, where to buy your game, all that
Yep.
kind of stuff.
You can find me on the TreeFall Studios YouTube channel.
In multiple places.
In multiple places. Yeah. No, but actually I am so grateful that you did that video with you and your wife
Oh,
about
yeah?
when I launched my game. That was so fun to watch.
Oh, nice,
Um,
man.
like, oh yeah, it was I was cracking up the whole time. You guys are such a hilarious duo,
Oh,
like
thank
playing
you.
games together. Yeah,
Yeah,
that
I
was
told
that was
her that,
awesome.
and I told her, I was like, yeah, Thomas says we're a dynamic duo. We got to get on the camera together again. She was like, that was it. She's like, I'm not doing it. She's like, glad he enjoyed it now. She's like,
Yeah.
I don't think I'm returning to the camera. She doesn't really like to be on camera. She was on one other of my videos. I did a let's play of the Perplexing Orb to market
Mhm.
that, and because that game was multiplayer, I had two of my friends and one of my wife's friends and my wife. They all four played it. I didn't play it because I would have crushed them all, my
Yep, yep,
game. So,
yep, yep,
so she has featured in some of my videos, but she doesn't really like to,
yeah,
all that kind of stuff. But I was thinking about it. There's a lot. I just I want to support other developers like you and who are people like me. It was so hard when I first got started, and the industry is so fickle, and it's so hard to stay, above the full time
yeah.
development income line and stuff. So, and I'm rooting for you and stuff. So I was like,
Mhm.
making a video like that's easy. I wish people would have, done stuff like that for me back in the day.
Yeah,
It's
totally.
it's super fun, and plus it's fun to collaborate and work with other people and on stuff that's not your own.
Yep.
It's just a whole lot of fun.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
Yeah, it's so much fun. Yeah.
yeah.
Well, I really appreciate it.
Well, I'm glad you enjoyed it at least.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So
Um, yeah, I don't know. I feel like we covered a lot, but I also feel
yeah.
like every topic that we covered, I could probably still talk for hours about just because all of it
Oh
is
yeah.
so interesting, you know?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
But
We're
yeah.
surface leveling some of those for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
but I've really enjoyed it. I'm excited to see who you bring on the show next. I think this
Yeah.
will be a really fun series.
I think after this, I'm gonna because I got some other friends that would definitely be interested. So I think what I'm gonna do is we'll look and see how the reception of this goes, and then I'll put out some feelers. I'll reach out to some of the next couple of guests, and we'll see who we get on. I do know
Cool.
we could have some down the pipe that would definitely be a lot of fun. So, but your
Cool.
perspective is definitely welcome. It's pretty awesome. You're in a similar boat to me, but it's just interesting to hear your side of things because you just started.
Yeah.
You're where I was years ago, but the industry is completely different than where I was years ago. So your
Hmm.
experiences are different. What you're using is different, and how you're going about things are more similar to how I'm doing them now than how I did it back then. So
Hmm.
definitely a fresh voice and interesting perspective. I'm super glad to have you on the show, man. Hopefully this will be fun. So yeah, you can find you go ahead and pitch your YouTube real quick, and then I'll run the outro.
Yeah, my
Um,
YouTube is just my name, Thomas Stewart. At Thomas Stewart Dev is the YouTube handle.
Sweet.
That's you can connect to everything on there. It's got links to my Twitter and Discord and Patreon and all that jazz. Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Sweet, man.
Oh, go buy Tanks but No Tanks on Steam.
Yeah, I was like, come on. I was like, I'd have to do that
Yeah,
for you. I'd be like,
I'm
thanks
not
for
used
no
to having a
thanks.
game out. It's only been like a week, you know, so I'm not used
Yeah,
to hawking it to people.
dude.
Yeah, Tanks but No Tanks. You can go buy it. You can actually pay money and then go play it, which is
E-
great.
Exactly. Now
Yeah,
your outros now. You're gonna have to. You're gonna be like, all right, so follow me here, YouTube,
yeah, yeah,
Twitter. Then you're gonna be like, all right, now buy this game, and you buy these games. Here's where you can find this, and this. Oh yeah, and you
uh,
gotta support me on Patreon. Here's the
yeah.
Patreon page. You gotta do your 3-tier outro. You
Correct.
gotta all the different
Usually,
places.
usually, I'm just like, thank you for watching to the end of my video.
Yeah, yeah, that's what I used to do all the time. I'm surprised anyone makes it all the way to the end, but I
Yeah.
mean, like some people do. I used to put in the little challenges where I'm like, I would say something stupid and be like, put this in the comments if you made it to this far in the video.
Oh yeah.
The old trend.
Yeah.
That's like a watch time trick people used to do back in the day. So you knew who your OGs were,
Yeah.
following along. But guys,
That's
thanks
funny.
so much for tuning in to the dev discussion here with Thomas Stewart. Follow all of his places. He didn't even mention it. Follow him on Twitter. He's also at Thomas Stewart. Just throw that out there. You can follow us at TreeFall Studios on YouTube. You can subscribe here if you're not and already subscribed to the channel. You can follow us on Twitter at TreeFall Games. There'll be links down below to join our Discord. You can go do that if you want to connect with us more personally, get all of our updates. You'll never miss an update. by being in our Discord. We're just talking about it. You can subscribe to us on Patreon. Thomas also has a Patreon, so you can follow us, either one of us, if you want to support us a little bit further, get some behind the scenes perks. You can check out Patreon. That would be at Thomas Stewart and at TreeFall Studios for me. All of my games are available on PlayStation, so go ahead. Like I mentioned, it's part of the new fall sale. I believe that's what it's called. It's going to be all over the PlayStation. It starts on October 11th. We're actually recording this beforehand, but when it goes live, I think that's tomorrow, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so by the time you guys are watching this, we're going to have a ton of games in the fall sale. You can pick those up on PlayStation 4 or PlayStation 5. You can also find our games on Steam down below if you wish. And if you're one of the cool few who own an Atari VCS, we have games for you. You can find us right there on the front of the store page. Tilting Tiles and the Gem Collector are available now, with more titles coming soon. All right, guys, let us know what you thought of Dev Discussion. Did you hate it? Was Thomas the worst guest we've ever brought on the show? Is he the best guest we've ever brought on the show? The answers of both of those are probably yes at this point.
Fantastic.
So if you guys liked it, let us know what you thought. Go ahead and hash it out in the comments about some of these discussions we were talking about. Was this content helpful for you? Are you a game developer looking to get started? Is there anything that either of us said that stuck out to you that might help you on your game development journey? Be sure to go ahead and let us know in the comments below. Without further ado, guys, I will catch you in the next video. Thank you so much for tuning in. We highly appreciate it. See ya.